And we are live. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to another edition of the Living World of Darkness, New York by Night. We find ourselves, well, situated within the techno haven of one comrade Cruz, who, well, has been having quite a deal of trouble, quite a deal of tribulation and conflict is currently brewing up in this unfortunate adept's soul. And so he has decided to center himself just a tiny little bit with video games of Lords of Labor and the like. We find him in his own space, in his own little sanctum, squared away just above a literal porthole to hell. And that's where we begin the scene.
Well, Portal to Hell is among his list of concerns. He's already stockpiled. It should illustrate how desperate his situation is that at least two people have suggested a viable means of escape is press the button and go down into hell. Because there is an elevator that will take him partway down, and only he has the coin to use it. But in any case, he's avoiding thoughts of that for the moment. He's trying to center himself. He's sitting quietly in his room. Windows are covered, doors shut. He's got noise-canceling headphones on. He's attempting to meditate, and he's closing his eyes, playing a little bit of soft music at first, which will steadily fade away. He's only done this a few times before, but he's attempting to contact his so-called avatar.
Mm-hmm. You go ahead and clear your mind as a much more mystical bent enters into you. You, my good sir, have always valued technology, correspondence, the actual hardware and wires that run throughout the world, and even inside your head. You attempting such a thing seems a little bit, well, out of sorts, but something does indeed take hold within your own head. That particular implant goes ahead and starts to vibrate, starts to send you an interesting feeling, a perspective, and a trance. And you know for a fact that it comes from there. You know for a fact that you are initiating this particular trance, but it's not enough to go ahead and overcome your initial worry. A few times that you have spoken to this entity face to face have never really gone all that well. Tis an important aspect of yourself. Tis an important aspect of your very, very being. It's just all too much frightening to go ahead and get in touch with that you do not understand and that which you do not know. As you drift, you find yourself drifting. And despite the way you may be meditating, your limbs go ahead and are freed out from you. You seem to be floating in what can only be described as a very, very warm liquid that congeals around you. And as this liquid goes ahead and congeals around you, you feel the sensation of movement. Your eyes are currently blind. You start to think, why can't I see anything? It's because my eyes are closed. You vainly try to open them. It doesn't work. You think to yourself, why? Why are mine eyes not opening? And it comes to you, because I do not have the strength in my eyelids right now. I am coming to this place, not understanding, not knowing, and then the very, very sudden movement comes about. You feel yourself plucked. You don't feel yourself plucked in such a way as there are pincers or there are hands on you, but just simply that this ooze that you're situating yourself in has been ripped, ripped away. And you fly just for a tiny little bit in the air. And as you do so, you hear the sounds of skittering, sounds of that might be a scream, that might be a yell. Is that a shriek of enjoyment? Your ears go ahead and pick up even more sounds of continued skittering. And mixed in with the skittering, there is very much this electric ping. Ping, 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 ping. It's a mix between the skittering of so many legs and just this static that seems to burn through your very, very head. It's overwhelming. So very overwhelming inside your head. Eventually, the flying goes ahead and stops as you are deposited on the ground. This capsule that you're in, this little bud that you've grown from. You sense it more than anything. More than anything else, you know for a fact that actually at this moment, your eyes do indeed flash open as you find yourself in some sort of viscous orange fluid with a pincer. No, not a pincer. A knife that goes ahead and is drawn from the top of this disgusting, oozing little bud you find yourself in, all the way to the bottom. And once that knife goes ahead and opens up the bottom of this particular bud you find yourself in, you slip out. You slip out. You fall out. And before you is a chamber. It is a chamber of many, many, many things. It looks cavernous. But not only does it look cavernous, it also has a distinct metallic bent to it. It is both very, very much primordial and very, very much static. It is a place where the mystic part of you and the technical part of you go ahead and seem to mix. What do you do?
Well, oddly enough, the sounds don't seem as disturbing to him as they might to other people. He's never really had the overwhelming fear of spiders that most people do. It's one of those things where, of course, there's a difference between your average spider and the types of things he could meet out here. But their appearance itself does not disturb him as much. The bud that he was in, which he's going to look back, and he's thinking before he even looks that it was most likely a cocoon of some kind. But he'll take a look just out of curiosity. That's what he figured as much. Even that, it's to him, and he immediately thinks of symbolism that might be attached to it, a form of rebirth or entrance into this world or any number of things this could possibly be. This, as you said, this is the mystical aspect, which it's not that he doesn't like the existence of magic. He accepts that magic exists. He understands that other people use it and treat it directly as magic. To him, as an adept, technology is the driving force. Magic is simply what we use technology to accomplish. The things we can do with it are impressive enough to qualify. He directly interfaces with reality. That's crazy enough of a concept, but it is rooted. His interactions with reality are based in technology and reality. He doesn't wave his hand and make things happen. It all has a basis. But he still is a little uncomfortable with the premise of an avatar. He understands what they are to a degree, that they're a part of him, a higher soul. He's explained the concept to enough new mages in the last couple months. But even though he can explain the concept to someone else, that doesn't mean he's always comfortable with that being his. Which is why he's barely talked to his. But there's a time and a place for everything, and it is one of his weaknesses, and he's trying to overcome it. So he takes a look around the chamber at this point. Out of curiosity, is it obvious what opened the cocoon, or?
You go ahead and look behind you. You do, in fact, see the cocoon. It is very, very clear. It seems to have a really, really strong but very, very clear membrane to it, the contents of which you are one of them, but the contents of which are orange and ooze and start to filter out, start to flow into the nooks and crannies of where you've been placed. And if you look up, you can see one particular very, very long limb with, well, black chitinous. It seems to go ahead and have a knife-like appendage towards the end of it. And you can see it retracting, being brought back into the ceiling. And there are many, many, many other limbs just like it.
I look towards the center of the room then. It's not, from what little I remember of the Avatar, it's not much that it's not likely for her to stay quiet for too long. Especially when she knows I've, arrived to try and talk to her. It's a rare enough occasion. Which is a sticking point, but that's something we could always discuss.
You definitely go ahead and see in the middle of this chamber a bit of a raised platform, a plateau. And further on, you do see what looks like a seating arrangement. In fact, you go ahead and see a throne on one side. It's very, very macabre structure. Bone seems to be there, perhaps of a defeated enemy long, long ago. But the other half is very much technological. It has different circuitry and wires that are currently beeping and blooping. And if you went ahead and judged a guess, there seems to be a visor there, an info visor. So while one side is very, very much aggressive and domineering, the other one is more interested, much more patterned, obsessed. In fact, this entire cavern, this entire chamber you find yourself in is meticulously patterned. Every limb is where it should be. Every chamber is how it should be. Even the stone working on the ground of this particular plateau is perfect. It goes ahead and notes somebody who knows, understands, and is obsessed with things being orderly.
He walks up towards the raised platform, and is it that the table is a mixture of those two things, or that like the left half is one and the right half is another?
The throne, more further into the cavern, is a mixture of both. It's just that one extreme is on the left and one extreme is on the right.
Okay, fair enough. Is there anywhere else to sit, or is it just the throne?
The throne is there, and the plateau is there. I would not suggest sitting on the throne. In fact, the
Oh
throne
no,
seems to
no,
be
no, no.
situated in such a way as to look down on the subject on the plateau.
Well, with that in mind, he steps up forward onto the plateau and waits.
Okay, you want to wait? That's cool.
At least a little while. He's not going to wait there forever, but he's hoping she'll arrive pretty quickly.
30 seconds passed. 45 minutes passed. You can see some of the other Dizians of this particular cavern go about their work. There is definitely a few arachnid creatures that go ahead and skitter along the ceiling just above you, and one of which seems to go ahead and skitter right behind you, just going ahead and tickling your leg before skittering away. Actually, if you let that arachnid go ahead and skitter along your legs, you'll find it grabbing them.
Like it's trying to guide me in a direction.
No, just simply not guiding you. Simply grabbing a hold of one of your legs. It's about a foot. It's about a foot wide, foot tall. It has grabbed your leg, and do you stop it?
Well, by itself, it's not too much of a threat. It shouldn't have the strength to move me, but I kind of look down at like that's mine.
It goes ahead and nods and sinks its fangs into you.
Ouch. Damn it. I don't like hurting spiders, especially since, I kind of have some respect for them, but this one is attacking me. I'll shake my foot to get it off if I can.
You can definitely go ahead and shake your foot to get it off. It'll go ahead and retreat quite nicely. It has its blood. It has your blood on his fangs, his very, very shiny and metallic fangs. This goes ahead and skitters off back to its own enclave. That's about the point you go ahead and hear a familiar voice. Familiar voice goes ahead and says, "It is very, very awfully rude for a guest not to identify itself and to force me to go ahead and make that identification for myself."
He looks back towards the throne. Is she sitting there at this point, or?
The voice comes from behind the throne, and you can go ahead and see, yes, a very, very much familiar form starting to walk out from behind it.
I didn't think I needed. I didn't think I was so infrequent a visitor that I needed to identify myself. But if you want, Richard Kurz, Conrad Kurz, depending on which iteration we're talking about, before or after the change.
A few seconds later, the spider that retreated back to its enclave goes ahead and hops on this particular form. This is a very, very regal figure, a very, very much a domineering figure who seems to have her eyes closed for the moment. But the little spider goes ahead and dabs a little bit of what's on its very, very silvery, metallic fangs onto her hand. She goes ahead and takes her hand and licks the palm of it. And when she does so, her eyes go ahead and open up to actually look at you. Ah, yes. Big, big, stupid. No, Vic, Vic, evil, evil grin goes ahead and crosses his form's face. How are we doing, my little charge, my little ward?
You could have asked for the blood, and I would have given it to you. I don't. You are a part of me. I am a part of you. I don't begrudge you your share.
That is right. I could have all of you if I wanted.
But by that same logic, I would then have all of you, and such an exchange would not be pleasant for either of us, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure it would be quite ecstatic. Being one with another one. It's a wonderful feeling.
Depending on context, I suppose I can acknowledge that. But as much as I love discussing philosophy, that's part of why I'm here, actually, but not that sort.
My dear adept, she says, and she says the word adept in a very, very digital, mechanical voice. If it was coming from a text to voice algorithm.
But the rest of what she's saying sounds normal, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
My little adept, what brings you to me?
Well, I had the impression that you would know everything that's happening to me. You have, after all, access to what I see and think and everything else. All of it is an open book to you for the most part. But as you can probably tell, things are a little bit hectic at the moment. The web is being unraveled, at least a little.
Well, it is true that I can see and hear and be anywhere you are. It's best for somebody to go ahead and reflect back what they believe is their biggest concern.
The biggest concern of the moment or the biggest concern in the long term?
Any. All. You, my little adept, have been wonderful in keeping everything static and orderly, keeping things progressing on as they should. And such, I have not deemed it necessary to go ahead and interact with you. But I can imagine how the last few days have gone ahead and rattled you quite a bit. But it is necessary with even your own soul to go ahead and explain to your soul what is the matter.
Literal soul searching. I can deal with that. All right. Uh, let's see. To put it briefly, those that I was working with are not pleased with my recent actions. I attempted to help them, and perhaps was foolish in the way that I did so. But I did attempt to help them. They see it as a betrayal because it did not go well. And they have essentially exiled me, though I had already chosen to leave. And there's every chance they may chase me to my new home.
So, what you are telling me is you did your utmost to serve the people around you, your little cluster mates, as I like to go ahead and call them.
I do try to help others around me. That's always been one of my goals.
She goes ahead and gives you a stern stare and simply says, "Do not speak when I am talking."
He grimaces, but quiets.
She goes ahead and retains her very, very not friendly, devious composure. She actually goes ahead and takes a chance to sit back and relax and sort of talk to the air more than talk to you. Yes, you little clutter mates. You try to do them a good turn, try to weave a good web, and it turned out bad. Hmm. And so you have gone ahead and found yourself another web to weave with your own accomplices, another batch of cluster mates. That is good. That is proper. That weaves a very, very strong web that makes sure that the pattern is just as so. But you're afraid. Oh, my dear Adept. Did I not tell you not to be afraid? She goes ahead and turns her glance back down to you. Why are you so afraid of your cluster mates coming back to you with arms wielded?
Oh, he literally doesn't need anything but his arms. If you examine that portion of my memory, I think you'll find that. He is, either one of them could easily defeat me. And the two of them combined, let us just say that I am expending every card I have to try and make this place defended. Obviously, when he says this place, he's referring to where his body resides.
And that is good. That is very, very good. You're building the weave, you're binding the pattern, you're making the web, or you are strong. If you continue to do so, if you continue to make your web strong, there's no need for you to fear your cluster mates coming in, because they will have to step on your webs that you weave. And if they step on the webs that you weave, you will know and you'll be able to react accordingly.
Indeed. That is the plan, but I worry that this has all been something of a detour of sorts. I learned things while working with them, which, though very valuable, they were troubling. I don't know. You know, of course, I wish to liberate Vi from their clutches. But that's... I have very little understanding of that path, and I am not sure. I knew when I started on this path that I would have to find someone to help me with that. As yet, I still haven't found... Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
She goes ahead and interrupts you quite directly. So your previous cluster mates just weren't able to? Unwilling? They don't seem like people you should associate with if they do not pull for your own agenda, your own plans, your own pattern for the future.
I don't think any of them would have been terribly sympathetic towards this. They do not approve of associations with the technocracy. That word, by the way, should, given his connotations with them, despite his reliance on technology, that word in this place is not good.
No, of course not. As soon as you go ahead and speak the word in this place, this very, very chamber of your own soul, howls and screams seems to come up out from behind you. Screams and shrieks of the tormented and the damned, almost. As if you were riding down that elevator and hearing every single damn soul. But more than that, from the other side of the chamber, there is just this huge static storm, both visible in just a lightning and also audible with the crackling of your head. Your head is hurting so much now. You should probably not speak that word again.
Oh, he doesn't intend to. That could very well have been the first time he said it here. But he just kind of winces. He's like, they do not approve of them. They do not approve of anyone in contact with them. And they're hypocrites about that. They themselves have a deal with them. I think their primary concern is that I will reveal that to others.
Explain your cluster mates. Explain them.
They number 4. You mean the ones I have now, or the ones that former cluster?
Previously.
There we go. Thank you. The leader is a woman named Tomi, and kind of gestures. In this place, magic, and he does consider it to be magic as much as technology, is far easier to work. You can do things in this place, I would assume, that outside, this is more like a lucid dream.
Oh, absolutely. When you go ahead and mention Tomi's name, a little bit of a projection from above you goes ahead and starts to light up and activate, and around, and just like in front of you on the same plateau, the same. I already said plateau, so I'm not going to reiterate that. Is a green holographic image of the woman.
She is one of the hollow ones. Not quite a tradition mage, but as I understand it, she carries some amount of respect in this city. She has some amount of skill, more than most I have met in this city. She is actually very neutral in most matters. I don't believe she was at the heart of this, but she leaves the control of her web, so to speak, and the leadership of her cluster to her second. He gestures, and Alaric will appear.
Green and holographic, and probably a really, really pissed off.
Oh, that's exactly how he pictures him right now. That's precisely accurate. And he also probably looks even bigger and burlier than he would.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, this man, I can respect his wish to protect his family, but I believe he goes quite too far in that. There is a point where if you attack everyone that is not part of your family, you will not save your family, you will destroy your family. And I believe he is, if not crossing that line, he is close to it. One should not implicate their cluster in a fight against the world. It doesn't end well.
Some members of a cluster are called upon to be guardians to protect the web, and most of the time they do well in such a position. She goes ahead and gestures for you to continue.
One is not currently a factor, and a picture of Maggie as he last saw her in her hospital bed, recovering from the physical wounds perhaps, but still completely out of it. Her name is Maggie. She is an orphan. Rather talented healer, as I understand it, but she is lost to us for the moment. I do not believe she will be a problem.
An electronic voice goes ahead and utters from this figure's mouth, Maggie Keller, orphan, quite adept, healing, current coma victim, scratch, edit, victim of attempted murder, scratch, 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 condition critical, coma, scratch, 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 unlikely to recover, scratch, 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 in danger from external forces. Again, at that point, the mechanical, electronic, digital voice stops and lets you continue.
He kind of hesitates for a moment. That actually sounds very similar to something he's been told recently, but that could be why it's appearing. This place, he's still not sure the difference between this place and his own subconscious. It is part of his subconscious, but it's also something more. Mages don't simply dream their own realities. There is a basis for it, however small. So he kind of hesitates for a moment and says, well, I'll get back to that one. And the last one is honestly the one I would least enjoy dealing with. Ken. And there's a picture of Ken as in his full monk regalia, which he has only seen once, but that memory sticks out.
Why this one in particular you wish not to interact with?
Because I believe him to be, quite honestly, one of the most, well, to be honest, he is what I would call a good person overall. He is extremely paranoid about he stops before he says the word, and there might even be a moment of stillness as he almost said the word, but he doesn't. Them. He fears them. He's right to do so. But he carries that fear too far, much like the others. He does not act on it in the appropriate way. They are, if it came down to it, if Alaric's zeal caused him to be harmed while trying to, as you put it, traipse upon my own web, I would not feel any guilt over that. If he died, I might feel some, but if he were injured, I would not feel bad. Him, however, or even Maggie if she were awake, I would regret any harm coming to them. I highly doubt Tomi would involve herself, but it kind of trails off. Ken was the one who brought me into that cluster. I owe him. I have aided them many times. One could argue that debt has been repaid, and more so by their current treachery, or at least interpretation of my acts as treachery. Kind of sighs a bit.
Interesting. Click, 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 click. Click of mandibles from behind the throne. As on the ground there seems to be a bone, a bit of sinew, a bit of meat that has yet to be picked cleanly off. The woman in front of you goes ahead and grabs it and tosses it back, and when she does so, there is the great gnashing of teeth. And she goes ahead and looks down at you.
1 second. Just 1 second.
We're waiting a second as the player needs to do something really important.
Back.
Okay.
Like I said, less than 15 seconds. Go ahead.
As she does it, the mechanical, electrical, digital voice goes ahead and speaks. Bring out the transcript.
Kind of tilts his head. Transcript of?
How this cluster became something else to you.
Oh, was that all? Kind of closes his eyes for a moment, and there'd basically be a data stream, images, conversations between him and different people.
Conversations between Conrad and different people, different text messages and communications flying all the way, emails, letters, phone calls, all the every single correspondence that Conrad has had over the last few days.
It wouldn't be that long of a list, but there is a it would most likely start with information from Ken transmitted to the rest of the cluster, which alerts them to a possible threat in the form of an FBI man named Kevin Graham. Kevin Graham apparently poses a threat, not just to Maggie, but to the cluster. Possibly to others, but the emphasis is on our cluster.
This is where the Avatar goes ahead and shuts down the entire data stream for a moment. It goes ahead and focuses specifically on Ken's communication and then Conrad's communication. And she goes ahead and points at that very, very pivotal point right before Conrad goes ahead and contacts his ex, and you can see the anger flowing through. There's a very, very hot flash of just passion, and she simply says, "They asked for information about this agent, this ignorant individual. They asked you to come up with any profiling information," she says in that digital voice. "You did not tell them. You did not tell them. You be reaching out to their enemies."
Their enemies.
"Your enemy, Conrad. Your enemy."
I don't see them in that light. I see them as misguided. They are a threat, as any misguided force can be. A man driven to insanity, armed with a knife, is a threat to everyone around him. You
At
still
this
respect
point,
them, but
as you're continuing on, at this point, your avatar goes ahead and descends from her platform, from her throne, goes ahead and walks right up to you with one hand currently clawed, and she goes ahead and grabs you by your own neck and sort of pushes you to the ground. Do you resist?
nope.
All right. She goes ahead and pushes you to the ground, and she simply goes ahead and says in a very, very dead and monotone voice, until, and not a moment before, will your dear Violet, until that point where you can go ahead and rip her away from the web that she has weaved herself, she is your enemy. Until you can go ahead and liberate her, she is your enemy. And corresponding with her in such a flippant manner, that is what they are angry about, Conrad. Do you not understand?
He understands, but he's remaining quiet for a moment. It's hard for him to articulate this. To him, up until between the time of his becoming a mage, her running away, and him arriving in the city, which was an intervening year or two, he spent almost all of that on the run. He would not talk to her. He didn't communicate with her, except by accident once or twice when he didn't realize who the person texting him was. You know, he played the good soldier. He wouldn't talk to them. He ran. He told everyone how bad the technocracy was and kept moving in the hopes that she would lose his scent. It never worked. And then when he got here, he found himself in an awkward situation. He found himself in a situation where he didn't have to worry about being taken. He didn't have to worry about being snatched off the streets. He had immunity, something which, to his knowledge, was impossible. But it happened. For the first time in years, he was able to talk to his ex, someone who he cared about very deeply. He was able to talk to her.
Are you currently thinking those things?
Yeah, it's all running through his head, essentially.
Above your head, there is a little bit of a data stream and a floating projection with these kind of thoughts and ideas. You see the avatar go ahead and look up, still holding you down to this little particular data stream. Explain immunity. How did you get that?
The cluster leader made a deal with them.
The contents of which are?
Immunity for those within. And an image of the Woolsworth building appears. Those who are part of her cluster, which, even though she claims now I was never truly a part of their cabal, as their word would have it, I still fell under the act of protection just by living there.
She goes ahead and gestures behind you, or at least behind herself, which you can't see because you're currently like on the floor.
No.
She sort of gestures to the projections behind her, and then a projection of the Woolworth building goes ahead and pops up as well, which is protected. The building, the people, an individual. Did you really think that you were protected?
They certainly believe so.
There's a very, very evil and cruel laugh that comes from your avatar. A piece of your soul is laughing. A piece of your soul finds this absolutely, utterly hilarious. And she goes ahead and releases you. My dear adept, don't you understand? They can't protect you. Never could. That's why you needed yourself. That's why you needed me. This is why you'll always come back to me. Those people provided you a false hope. That's what they did. They lied to you. That's what they did. And this little transgression here just goes ahead and highlights that lie, that big, big lie. She goes ahead and looks down at you. Was it a lie?
Which part is she highlighting?
Up to your interpretation.
Well, I'm saying, like, what is she interpreting? Like, there probably wouldn't be a text of them saying we're protected. They didn't really communicate that over Chantry chat.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be like an audio transcript or something else, maybe. If you're talking about, is she talking about them, like their statement of you're protected because you're part of this group? She's saying that's a lie? Or is she talking about something else?
Actually, yeah, we'll go ahead with that interpretation since it's closest to your head and you can influence where the conversation goes ahead and takes you.
Okay. I can't guarantee that they are protected, but I know that they are, as far as I'm aware, one of the only groups in the city to be in contact with them, sporadic though it is. They believe themselves to be protected. They had me convinced that I was protected. That is the basis on which I made my decisions.
She goes ahead and leans down. Actually, she'll get on her knees and lean down more towards you. And this time when she goes ahead and embraces you, it's not to go ahead and choke you, but to go ahead and give you a very, very much a cradling hug. Oh, poor adept. You thought that you could speak with her. You thought that you could go ahead and talk to her, communicate, correspond, get back in touch with that which you lost. I'm sorry. I'm so very, very sorry.
Well, he doesn't resist the embrace so much, though it is a little awkward. He's not really the hugging himself kind of person. After the moment passes, he gently disentangles himself and steps back, reasserting the proper order of things. And it's just like, well, does that answer your question, though, as to why I did it?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
His logic is just that, as he points out, this is why I did it. That is, I did not attempt to betray them. they believe otherwise. They see it as a betrayal, whether willing or just because I was foolish. But they don't. It boils down to they do not understand. They will not understand because they are not in the same position.
Fair enough, fair enough. When you go ahead and disentangle her, tangle yourself from her, she goes ahead and stands up, actually goes ahead and gives you a bit of a kick. Because fuck you for rejecting my embraces. She'll go ahead and stand up, be very, very regal, and step back and make her way back to her own throne. Letting you stand up, letting you do whatever you want to do.
Well, I managed to slightly derail my avatar from her speech. That takes effort. Well, since some of the data streams are still up there, presumably, he kind of gestures and he's like, well, I admit my mistake for trusting them and trusting my cluster mates, essentially, to follow a certain rule. And I admit my mistake in attempting to simply, as you put it, very aptly, flippantly use this connection. There's another adept in town who is very skilled. He's given me some advice in the matter, and I believe I will follow it. He said, in fact, I could have used my idea and done it differently, and it would have been far likelier to work. A skilled weaver can make a better web out of the same materials.
A skilled weaver can go ahead and create a self-replicating web that can be thrown out into the world, that can build a structure without his direct involvement, and thus protect himself, his identity, and those around him, his cluster mates.
Precisely. And that's what he's trying to teach me. Not sure how effective the lessons will be yet, but that, I believe, will be more to do with me than him. But I will do what I can.
Mm-hmm. She goes ahead and gestures to the plateau before you, and the members of the Vigilant Tower Chantry go ahead and shrink, and a bigger one of the intern goes ahead and pops up. You can see your avatar go ahead and lounge in her half and half chair and stare at the figure. Who is this man?
An adept, the one I spoke of. His name is the Intern. He is, if I'm not mistaken, the most experienced of our order in the city.
What is this correspondence to you?
Teacher, quest giver, guidance counselor, perhaps. Kind of smiles a bit. But by the way, just out of character, I want to state this. To anyone listening to this, if you're thinking to yourself, why the hell does Conrad talk like this here? It's because he's an introvert. This is his world. Outside of this place, no. Moving on.
What as your teacher, mentor, higher level experienced character advised you?
For the moment, to much as you would say, guard myself, build a web. He will assist me with that, actually. Teach me better ways to weave it. And protect myself and simply hold out for the moment. He is attempting to fix some of my errors. The cluster that I was a part of, obviously their deal, whether genuine or not, the attempt to create such a deal is a crime to our society. And simply participating in it would implicate me as well, but it would carry far worse consequences for them. and they know it. And I believe the intern is aware of the discord that would result, the tremors that would go through the web of the city.
How would the tower fall?
Any number of ways, but most likely it could fall to the higher orders. He gestures, and there's a rather intricate image over the Woolsworth building. The 9 symbols of the spheres, each one just floating in the air, gigantic, and above them 9 figures, very stereotypical images of every one of the traditions assigned to those spheres. Executors, representatives of the higher orders. They fear that outcome very much because those people are the justice givers. Their investigation would reveal many things they are not proud of.
While such an investigation would certainly take place, you would fall.
I would
die. Your web would be unwoven, and you would be completely and utterly destroyed. But she goes ahead and takes the picture of the tower. The tower would remain.
I'm not quite sure if that's the case, though. They are implicated in far more than I am. A simple cursory examination of my own memories would reveal their own guilt.
You are afraid that these cluster makes will go ahead and simply murder you, so that the executors would never find of their treachery.
Honestly, that may be their goal. I think they give too little credit to the executors. But if they think a little bit of death would stop them. But more to the point, the tower would most likely fall, or at least be heavily damaged. I don't believe it would be destroyed in the form of any attack, but a tribunal, as they call it, would definitely find guilt. I would fall, yes, but so would they. By comparison, my crime is less.
She goes ahead and looks at you very, very sternly. I do not care whether or not the tower goes ahead and succeeds this particular siege, or if it falls crumbling down. I do not care about the tower. What I care about is you. Should you fall, should you die, that would be the worst outcome for me. Do you understand?
That is why the intern has convinced me not to call for a tribunal. He prevented me from doing so, in fact, and I have reason to believe he would prevent it in the future. Though that could be as much to protect his own interests as to protect mine. Still, I believe he has some reason.
How would it be protecting his own interests? What is his stake in the matter?
Well, I have no direct evidence saying that he knows of the issue with the technocracy, but actually, he wouldn't have said that word because I'm not stupid. He wouldn't get that caught up in his own speech. Yeah, exactly. There we go. But there's a little data stream video playback from his perspective, him walking into the Ground Zero cafe, and there's his first meeting with several of those cluster mates. And there's the intern setting up a VR rig that allows them to physically travel into the web. That same mission. He facilitated that mission.
She goes ahead and looks at you. So you're saying you would destroy him as well?
I'm saying that may be why he's interfering in this.
Oh, so he is interfering with your plans and your ideas with weaving your own web. Perhaps you should go ahead and try to dispatch him. Take him out of the equation, along with these previous cluster mates that have betrayed you so badly.
Yes, I'll just pull out my magical powers of godhood and simply smite them, shall I?
Yes. She goes ahead and looks at you seriously. Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm not quite ready for that. I have been working quite hard to improve my knowledge of such things, but I don't believe I am anywhere near the capability to deal with even the least of these cluster mates. He actually points at Ken for that. Sad to say it, Ken is, in his eyes, the least capable. Mostly because of his lack of magic.
She goes ahead and looks at you, cuts your conversation short. So, if you're not willing to go ahead and bring down destruction on both your heads, if you're unable to go ahead and defeat your enemy, and if you really go ahead and wish to go ahead and hide in your hole, what use are you? Adapt to me.
It is not cowardice to avoid a fight that you cannot win.
You say so. You say you cannot win. Have you gone through the simulations? Can you imagine the battle inside your head before the battle actually takes place?
Certainly. And every projection shows me in a heap on the floor.
Several projections go ahead and blast through the little plateau, some of which go ahead and find you completely and utterly dead, and some of which actually find you quite triumphant against the kin model.
I don't even know how to throw a punch properly, or wield a gun, or wield a knife. And he's an athlete with martial arts skill. I'm not saying it's impossible, but the odds are rather against me.
Everybody dies when you run them over with a car.
This is true, but again, I would rather not kill my cluster mates. My goal, if I am to state one, is to make it unwise for them to try and kill me. To be able to repel their advances and make them rethink their actions.
That is easily enough done by setting your own web.
Which I have been doing. So you need not go into the... He's not trying to be offensive, but he's basically like, you don't need to act as if I'm sitting on my hands doing nothing. I mean, technically, at this moment I am, but that's another story. So, I am working on projects. I am working on defending this place.
Do you wish to hold yourself up indefinitely?
No. The intern said 1 week. I believe he has...
Go ahead.
He would not say, but I believe he has a plan. And he has so far watched out for my interests somewhat. He led me to this place. He led me to the people who helped me claim this place. He's given me every opportunity to grow so far, much like you. I believe he has a vested interest in me. I'm not claiming he's a saint or in any way, what would the appropriate word be? He's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart. If he's helping me, it's likely because he knows I will be useful to him.
This is a faulty and errorous and probably disaster-filled path for you. Depending too much on one particular individual can only spell disaster for you.
But I'm not going to solely depend on him. I have others. My current cluster mates. And hopefully more.
You will still have to deal with the political ramifications of your disastrous mistake. How do you plan to deal with it when you step out of your web?
That's a very good question. The goal, as I understand it, it's like he keeps forgetting that she's either not aware of everything or that he is required to spell it out per the rules. But he kind of like hesitates and goes, okay, something you might not have been aware of. And he replays a bit of his conversation with the intern. He says, the intern basically saying that, as I recall, the general gist of the conversation was that calling down because the whole point of the intern's conversation he just had with Conrad was to basically spell out that if we call down the thunder of the executors, many things will go wrong for many individuals, least of which being my character. So basically, he, gestures at that conversation, then says, he went on to say one thing of importance. They know how bad that impact would be on them. They know that even if they do not fall, they would be faced with easily the most challenging fight they have ever had. They do not want that. All we have to do is show that we are willing to push that button.
The mutual option. Mutual assured destruction. She goes ahead and looks down at you. I hate mutually assured destruction. You've lived through mutually assured destruction. The Reagan era and the Nixon era were terrible times.
Actually, he's
No, but he may be misjudging your age.
Either way. Yeah, he's actually like 25. But either way. He's just like, it's the idea that
assured destruction goes ahead and guarantees a status quo, a pattern, which, if you accept the pattern, is very, very good and very, very great.
And as the world has proven, that pattern can eventually be rewritten. It does not continue indefinitely. Administrations change. Members of clusters change. Clusters' priorities change. More to the point, it's difficult to convince others to go along with your plans when you cannot give them all the details of someone's transgressions. They cannot fully explain my transgressions without explaining theirs, which is why they cannot call support from the other clusters in the city.
Are they?
According to the intern, they may, but he did not believe they would be likely to succeed, and that would be why. Either way, he believes that if we hold that card in reserve, and they know that it is in reserve, that they will keep their distance. I cannot count on them for any sort of friendly conversation, shall we say, but they will keep their distance, and that is all I require of them. I don't need to see them defeated. I am not as bloodthirsty as some. He kind of gestures around a little bit. I am not vengeful. I prefer to help. But in this scenario, if they understand that their actions will bring more harm than retribution, we think it will actually keep them at bay. At least long enough for us to find a more permanent solution.
You keep saying we and not I. I don't like your reliance on somebody I don't know.
You don't know many of the people I interact with, though. I suppose there might be a way to introduce you. He kind of gets thoughtful. But, actually, I know there would be. But, ignoring that for the moment. The whole reason I established this place and accepted it from Cassie, momentary image of Cassie, the whole reason I accepted this institute from her and have agreed to take ownership of it was because I do want to be able to make my own decisions and rely on myself. But just as any hatchling from an egg spends a little time reliant on its surroundings before moving on further, I have to grow. As I am right now, I am not a predator. I may be able to see things. I may be able to interface with technology quite ably, but I am not a predator. I do not have the ability to hunt for myself yet. I can only spin a web and take whatever I find in the web.
That is disappointing.
It's simply the cycle of life. All things start in one place.
She goes ahead and shakes her head. No, 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 no. You've been running and hiding for so long you have forgotten how to fight. Or you never learned. She goes ahead and looks down to you.
Never learned. And just says it.
Poor baby.
I have plenty of ideas on how to do it, but I have to play to my strengths. You do not ask the smallest man in the room to try and lift a boulder.
You are an adept. This is simple enough for you.
Exactly. And that is my point. I work with what I know. I know technology. I know my means of interfacing with the world, and that is what I will use.
Then line your lab with all the technology that you can possibly find, interact with it, use it, bolster your own web, weave it tighter and tighter and tighter if you must.
And there is one thing I would say. I will remind you of this. Spiders are usually solitary creatures, at least in their own environment. One spider to a web. But my species does not always weave in ones. We weave in groups. Stronger webs from more people. And one skill I have, despite recent setbacks, I am able to find people. And while I am not the most convincing, I find people of like mind, and I find people who are willing to cooperate with me.
Then keep doing as such. If you are concerned with the political fallout from your errant mistake, keep looking towards those who do not know of your mistake and convince them. Convince them that you are trustworthy. Convince them that you will not make the same mistake again.
I can do that and show them best by actions. I've already been told that that may be a proper course of action by someone other than the intern. And I believe them, and I believe you in that regard. He's getting the impression that constantly referring to other people instead of her is pissing her off, so he's trying to avoid that.
She goes ahead and says again, bear in mind, you will have to deal with your previous cluster mates, with Kin, with Alric, and you will have to deal with them either with arms or with an open hand. It is up to you to decide whether or not you go ahead and reconcile with your previous cluster mates, or if you bring them to ruin, because I can tell you, the web that you weave right now is very, very tenuous at best. This stalemate, this mutually assured destruction will not hold and will not last for very, very long. You will either have to reconcile, bring contrition to them, or you will have to bring vengeance and justice upon them. Justice as I see it.
Your justice tends to be rather final.
Bloody, she says, as there's a bit of a spray behind her.
Exactly. But we will determine something. I believe that it is possible to convince them, but I will not put myself under their power. I do not trust their motivations. And you, of all people, should understand that, based on what I've shown you here, putting myself at their mercy, then or now, would simply result in a far quicker demise.
Then do not submit yourself to their tender mercies. If you wish reconciliation, if you wish contrition, which you do owe them. She goes ahead and looks down to you in the most pathetic and pitiful face. You do owe them.
Some. I've also aided them significantly.
You either owe them a reconciliation or a quick defeat, whichever one you prefer. Go on.
No, I thought you were continuing. Sorry. He just kind of nods. He's like, that's... If we can solve it with words, that would be best. I would prefer not to leave any kind of a trail. Trail of bodies is not a good thing, even were I capable of it.
Then,
Not with them. Killing our own kind is heavily frowned upon.
then you will have to meet with them. You will have to talk with them. Are you afraid to go and speak to your previous clustermates?
Only if it is in a place where they hold sway. That is why I attempted to convince them to meet with me elsewhere, with others that I trust more.
Specifics. Laying down, and she goes ahead and brings down one of the transcripts. Bringing down specifics would have eased their minds so much, even if they are filled with a kind of hate and anger and avarice.
They did not respond well to the idea. I would have been quite willing to arrange for a meeting as soon as possible with anyone else in my, shall we say, my direct contact. And I would have been comfortable with that. But they insisted that I meet with them on their terms in their place of power after threatening me. That was not... I did not feel... I may not have much in the way of survival instincts, but I believe they were alerted to that.
Doing that, meeting them at their place, would have been a form of reconciliation, would have been a form of contrition.
Unless they killed me. That would be another form of reconciliation, but again, a final one.
You are so obsessed with either one of these individuals, bringing both Kin and Alaric up, with simply destroying you.
They're quite capable of it. And one of them, I believed, would have been hesitant. The other, no. I would not even consider him to hesitate on the matter.
Mm-hmm. Then she goes ahead and brings up another few images of people that you do trust, you do know, whoever they may be, and simply says, if you had brought them as well, they would have hesitated.
They likely would not have been permitted in the building. They count their privacy very highly.
This is where a negotiation of peace talks is of utmost concern. Keeping correspondence, keeping negotiations up. You are an adept. Isn't it better to keep an open line of communication?
When possible, yes.
You do not believe it is possible at the moment.
They have done everything short of physically storming my border. They have announced to the city their belief in my guilt and done their best to ruin me. I do not believe that at the moment direct communication would be wise. I am more than willing to try and set it up through others as an intermediary, but I would not attempt to simply go and speak with them.
That point passed. She goes ahead and throws away the transcript. You're left with the situation currently in front of you. The path that you go ahead and take is certainly your own pursue. Please, please, please do not take a path that would just destroy you. Please, please, please do not take a path that would destroy everything that you've worked to accomplish. Please, please, please don't do that.
Well, I will see what I can accomplish then, on my own or with others. I will not throw away aid if it is offered.
You recognize your mistake, correct?
Yes.
Are you willing to explain to them that you have made a mistake?
The act of explanation, yes. ignoring all other details, I would be willing to make that explanation.
Are you willing to go ahead and accept their rendition of the events, their perspective of the events, and offer reconciliation?
Within reason, as long as it doesn't come with my head on a platter, yes.
Is it unfortunate that your previous cluster mates may never, ever trust you again, and may speak ill of you, and what did they call it? Naivete? But this is not a position that you cannot recover from.
Certainly not. There are still those in the city who are willing to give me the benefit of the doubt.
Goes ahead and looks sternly at you. There are also those that are more than willing to take what has transpired, use it to ruin you both.
I'm aware. That possibility has crossed my mind. There are those in the city who have no specific reason to dislike me, but do. So, simply the way we are.
Do your best to weave your own web. Do your best to bring some sort of resolution with your previous cluster mates. Do your best to maintain your own web, but do not be afraid to venture out away from it. And should you meet your previous cluster mates, those that you have wronged, either only perceived to be wrong, whether actually wrong, does not matter. You will have to deal with them. Don't
Perfect.
die, dear Dad-Up. Please, don't die.
Definitely try not to. And with that, he, sensing perhaps that the meeting is nearing its end, he kind of looks around like, He hasn't been here in a long while, and the way he came in is not necessarily the best way to leave, so he just thinks for a second. He's like, well, thank you for your advice and comfort. I will do my best to ensure you're not left without a person to guide. Kind of smiles.
She goes ahead and waves her hand, and as she does so, there is a limb that goes ahead behind her and throws to your platform a very, very shiny and silvery knife. Looks down at you. You know the way out.
Well, it's his mind, so he takes the knife and... Well, he could be a little more discreet about it, but he's basically more efficient than anything else. He takes the knife and simply uses it to rip open the very floor he's standing on and falls through if he can.
Fair enough. You understand that this is your exit, and therefore you take it.
Yep.
Therefore, you may go ahead and deposit yourself wherever you may need to, whether or not it is a dream, whether or not it is your conscious persona coming out of your meditative state. There is certainly a lingering feeling of, I hope this fucking helps you, jackass.
And certainly, of course, if it's a dream, it won't have anything to do with a hot pink-haired chick, won't have anything to do with that, of course.
No, of course
Baka.
Nonsense.
But in any case, yeah, he's managed to gain some information, hopefully, or at least some different insight, which may help him. He's never taken this path to try and destroy people. That may be one solution to his avatar, but his avatar is bloodthirsty. To him, it's simply a matter of how to convince them to cease hostilities. Through threats, that doesn't work well. Through intimidation, also doesn't work well. Apologies tend to make some difference, but by that route, the best he anticipates is getting them off his back. And he would have to find some way to repay them. But he is at least confident that he knows enough people who have connections to them that he may be able to arrange something. But the future is uncertain. So with that, he awakens and takes off the headset, turns off any of his electronica devices that he had working to help him with this, and simply goes to get back to work on weaving his literal web around the perimeter, trying to establish one.
All right. Time to give a little nice outro. We see Comrade, Cruz, Adept, Virtual Adept, Escapee, Vagrant, Traveler, Survivalist, whatever have you, going back to his own work, having reflected on his own very, very soul and been convicted by his own very, very soul, having a few paths laid out for him, one of which he'll have to take at some point. But that is all for another time. We go ahead and thank the watchers for watching. We go ahead and thank the player for playing. We will see you all again next time.